Hey, and for want of a better name, I'm going to call this adding tick component back. It's a little bit more than that, but we'll be about halfway towards this crosshair changing color based on firing state by the end. And the trickiest bit would be adding the tick components back to a actor component. You've got begin play and tick component rather than tick, and we're going to see how to do that amongst a whole bunch of other things. So just before I start this one, I'm getting some real strange things going on with my project. So I've gone back to my previous checkout, which is just here, the last video. This is, remember how you clear things out. You select these directories, VS, binaries, intermediate, and saved, and the solution file and the database file on PC, very similar on the Mac. Delete the whole lot. Rebuild the Visual Studio project files. Yes, you can do that on a Mac, but you have to go down to Services at the bottom of the right-click menu and then Generate Xcode Project. Once your project is generated, you won't be able to open Unreal because it will not have been compiled, so you need to go in and build your project. Once that's built, then you'll have a clean build. So sometimes it's worth doing this. What happens occasionally between videos is I go ahead and explore and try some stuff and then reset my commit. If you're doing that, if you're doing something exploratory and you decide, hang on, what I've just tried to do hasn't worked at all, I'm going to go back to my last known working position, my last commit, then sometimes you can just reopen the editor and recompile your code, but sometimes you'll end up with too much stuff that's cached and the editor may end up in a funny state. So then you need to clear this out as per the video in the previous section about clearing derived files. So once it has compiled in Visual Studio, it's a question of just reopening in the editor and you should be good to go. What it's doing here is it's trying to spawn my Oculus program, and that's because I've probably got VR plugins turned on. If you get a VR device and you don't want it trying to open it, you can turn all these plugins off. You can then restart the editor once those things have been saved and it won't try and open those plugins again. So there you go. All right, so let's have a look where we are. Anything to look at on the console? No, let's play the game. All seems to be okay. Good to go. All right, so let's start looking at the issues. What we're trying to do here is we're trying to get the cursor to change color. So this is going to be in the tank aiming component. And let's start with this bit here where we say is reloaded. So at the moment we're using a boolean, a local boolean in the fire method called is reloaded. What we want to do is keep track of whether we're reloaded every single frame. So the first challenge we have to overcome is putting a tick method back into this. So we currently don't have a tick. How do you find out what the tick signature is for an actor component? Remember, if we go to the header file for this guy, that it is a actor component. Well, one way is to go to the definition of an actor component, go and look at the actual code that you're going to be overriding, search for tick or tick component. I happen to know that it is. Just cancel that search because I've accidentally searched in the entire project, but it's found it. I meant to search in just this file, but it's okay. On line 478 of the actor component, here we go. We have the signature for tick component. There it is. So you can copy that, probably the easiest way, and go ahead and put it into the private section because we're not going to be calling it from any of our other classes of the tank aiming component. Notice it's a bit weird. It needs a delta time, a enum about the level tick type, and a f actor component tick function. So just paste it in, but of course we need override, just to signal that we want to check that against the parent class to make sure that we've got exactly the right naming. And then I'm going to go ahead and put this under the constructor inside the C++ file without the virtual, without the override on the end, and that's it, we're good to go. Now the only other thing we need to do to make it tick is where it says primary component tick.beacon_tick in the constructor, that needs to be true. Okay, let's just check that this is ticking. UE log temp, warning, text, aiming comp ticking. Okay, fantastic, save that and go ahead and compile. I'll show you the source control so you can see what's changed while it compiles. We have switched this boolean in the constructor and popped the tick signature in. The other place you can get that tick signature is here from Unreal Docs, uActor component tick component, and the signature is here. I'll put that in the resources of the lecture for you. Cool, compile failed, so we've made a boo-boo. Where did I make a boo-boo? Okay, unresolved externals mean linker errors about unresolved externals mean that I have a mismatch in my signature somewhere. So let's look at it in the header file. I say virtual void tick component. In the C++ file, what I'm missing is the name of the class. Okay, so that's the problem there. Let's try and recompile. So whenever you see a link error, first thing is to try and see why can't it link these two things together, and it's because typically of a mismatch in signature. Let's play the game. It's taking a long time to play, which suggests it's either going to crash or an ensure is going to fire off. The game started, but what's going on? We've got some serious errors here. Unresolved externals, that'll be from the last build. Starting hot reload success. Okay, so further down, handled error. Barrel and blueprint projectile on line 72 of the tank aiming component. Let's go look at that. We have an assertion failure on line 72. So here we check both the barrel pointer and the projectile blueprint pointer simultaneously. This will happen, by the way, immediately that the game starts, because currently the AI is firing immediately the game starts. You've probably noticed that. So one thing I can do is move this assertion down to where we need it, which is here. We don't need it until we're reloaded and about to fire. And the other thing we can do is split this into two assertions, one about the barrel and one about the projectile blueprint. And that will give us more information than we currently have about this error. See if there are any other errors. This is the stack trace for that error. Nope, so I'm going to clear the log, recompile and play the game. So the change there is to take this assertion from the top of the tank aiming component fire method and move it down into the if statement so that it is done just in time. Playing the game, still taking a while. Now we get to find out whether it's the barrel or the projectile blueprint that's causing the problem. Firstly, I can fire, so at some point it does have a projectile blueprint pointer set, and the barrel moved. Which one is it? The projectile blueprint. Okay, so I'm not going to worry too much about that right now because we're about to change the logic anyway so that we can't. In fact, let's change the logic now. Let's say that last fire time equals platform time in seconds on begin play so that neither of us can fire until we have waited for an initial reload for the gun to load in the first place. Let's do that on the begin play. So here's a little challenge for you. I just want you to add begin play in, which is much simpler than the tick component, and then insert that line of code there about the last fire time, which will make sure we can't fire until we've waited for the reload time in the beginning. I'm not going to put a challenge slide. I'm going to keep you on your feet. It's not always going to be a challenge slide there. I'm hoping you're listening too. Okay, so I'm going to use that line of code because I've already got it in the paste buffer. I'm going to take the class name because I know that I'm going to need that. It's going to be void. The class name begin play doesn't actually take any parameters, which is helpful. Then we've got this guy here, which I'm going to put in curlies. And then all that remains in order to do that is to comment why we're doing this. So that first fire is after initial reload. And then we just need to go virtual void begin play override on here, which I'd prefer to put just above the tick component. Perfect. Now let's see if that see what that prevents. Firstly, it may prevent this error. It may just be that the projectile blueprint is not available, not set quite that early. It is set, of course, on the tank against the tank blueprint, on the tank aiming component here, and it is set, but maybe it doesn't get set quite early enough. So we have a compile failure. It's probably something simple. Void should be preceded by something on the tank aiming component header file 45, and that's because I can't spell virtual for beep. Okay, let's refresh. Clear the logs because I want nice clear slate to start from and then see how we get on. So this is all about overriding methods in actor components. Okay, let's play the game, see what happens. It played nice and quick. Aiming is working and I can't fire for presumably 3 seconds. Yes, in the beginning. Let's just retest that. I'm firing, I'm clicking, and AI tanks aren't firing either until we get to the 3-second mark. I'm just going to make sure the AI tanks do eventually fire. I'm going to do that by going F11, get my controller out, my Xbox controller, and just move away and make sure that eventually these guys can actually fire. We must sort that bug with self-collisions with the ground. Yep, I just saw one fire there. Okay, so that initial firing is working now. Next thing I want to do just before we finish off this particular video is to, rather than in the fire, use this, where are we? This is reloaded. We want to use the enum we've already set up. So how are we going to do that? Well, we'll do it up in the tick, won't we? We're going to use that logic. In fact, I'll cut that logic now. And I'll say if firing status state not equal to e-firing state reloading, so if it's not reloading, then go ahead and fire, okay? So now we need to set the logic for it reloading or not reloading. We do this in tick. We don't need the log anymore in here, but we can say if, and then this logic, which is the difference between the platform time and the last fire time. By the way, if you don't like platform time, then you are welcome to say something different, which we've done before, which is get world, get time in seconds. I'm not going to change it until it causes a problem. It will cause a problem later, but I just thought I'd put that as an aside. You can go get world arrow get time in seconds. Anyway, if the platform time minus the last fire time is greater than the reload time, i.e. if we have reloaded, then what do we do with this state? Well, then e-firing state, or firing state equals e-firing state to fully declare it reloading. Okay, that's all very well. Let's try it. But of course, it's never going to leave the reloading state with this particular code, is it? Because this guy is going to set it to reloading, but nothing is going to be setting it to another state, which is the aiming or the locked states. But we'll do that in another video. So let's just try now. What do we get? We get continuous firing from the AI tanks. And that's expected, as I say, because if you look over in the tank aiming component, we are not initializing. We need to initialize to reloading. That's going to be our initial state, is that it's not ready to fire. Let's try that. So it initializes to reloading. Every frame, it asks the question, has it been the reload time since we last fired? When did we last fire? On begin play. So let's see what the behavior is like now. No firing for 1, 2, 3, and then of course it never leaves the reloading state, which is expected at this point because we need further logic under here, which we will do in the next video. So I'll just flesh out the further logic, handle, or to do, handle, aiming, and locked states. There you go. But let's not do that now. This video is plenty long enough. Congratulations on getting that far. I'm going to save all my code, quickly review with you what has been done in terms of the source control changes, and then we will finish this in the next video. So we have a begin play that's been put in. We, on begin play, set the initial fire as if it's fired, phantom fire in the beginning. On tick, we ask whether or not it has the reload time has passed or not. Later we'll handle the rest of the states. We moved some checks and split them up from up here down into there. And we moved the whole idea of, instead of using a local Boolean, we're using the member variable firing state enum. And then the changes in the header file are just the changes we had to put in the header file to support those code changes. So fantastic. I'll see you in the next video.